Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hey guys, welcome back to the show this week, and Happy New Year if you're listening to this right as soon as this episode comes out. Happy 2024. I can barely believe it. So in today's show, I wanted to talk about this concept of New Year and goals and dreams and intention and setting your vision, because while I am a huge fan of creating your life by design, like really thinking through how is it that I do want to feel? How is it that I want to walk through my days? Like, what are the things I want to be focused on this year? What are the things I need a little bit more clarity on? I really think that this process starts with reflecting first on the year that has gone by, because there's so many juicy tidbits and so many little nuggets of gold that really come up when, instead of what most people do, which is diving into the new year and getting so excited about their goals and their dreams and their visions, and maybe they've been working on that for weeks, even starting in November. I know you're out there if you're listening. I think that's amazing, but I also think that there is so much that can really come from actually wrapping up the year in a way where you're intaking a lot of different things and reflecting on the year that has gone by without just immediately jumping into what's new, turn the page, fresh start. We love a good fresh start. The sort of extreme of it, of the goodbye to this, hello to this, goodbye to all the negative things in the year before, because that's usually all our brains can remember. And then brand new, fresh start. Everything is going to be perfect as soon as the calendar turns over. In today's show, I wanted to offer you just a different perspective, or maybe a different way to start this year, and just as something you can try. Again, if you are finding that your process of goal setting or thinking through the year ahead is working for you, keep doing it. It's amazing. I really want to share this perspective because it's something for me that I have always felt like New Year's Day comes and it's this jarring experience. And I think that's because personally I have had so many tendencies in the all or nothing way of thinking, where you kind of get halfway through December and you're like, oh, why does this matter? It doesn't matter. I'll start over in the new year. In the new year, I'll pay more attention to my food. In the new year, I'll be working out again. In the new year, and we have hundreds of things that we want to actually be doing, but we're waiting for the time to change, or the day to change, or the year to change, whatever it may be, versus focusing on the things that are really going to make an impact. And sometimes that's mentally. It's like how you're talking to yourself that really makes a huge impact and a big change on how you're showing up day to day. I have always found it jarring, the start of the new year. And so something that has really helped me in the last 5 to 6 years specifically is giving myself the permission to have a slower start. I don't need to have everything done and all my goals written out by January 1st. If that works for you, great. But I found that taking off the pressure of it needs to be done on the 1st, to thinking through, what if I take the whole month of January, and that month is kind of my dreaming month. That's my organization month. That's the month where I am thinking through some things. I'm spending time thinking through, how do I want to feel? How do I want this to look? I'm mining through all the things that I learned from the year before. So if you have not listened to the last episode we did about wrapping up the year, I would go listen to that first, because you're going to just learn so many different things from that exercise and that reflection that then makes starting the next year ahead so much easier, and you know where you want to focus first. And that reduces so much of the overwhelm of doing this process, even if you really do want to sit down and write down intentions, sometimes we make it this big, huge thing because we're trying to cram in all the lessons from the year before, where we stand now, what your focus is, what you're wanting it to be going forward. So doing that exercise first just helps clarify and simplify it so that when you do get ready to actually sit down and think about the year ahead, it's so much easier to do. You have already done at least over half of the work, and now it's just time to dream ahead. So I like the slower start because there's so much going on. And if you have kids, your kids are out of school and we're not in our normal routines. So taking that exercise, really embodying it, let it sink in before moving forward, I think has been one of the best things that I have allowed myself and given myself that permission to do. And it just feels so much more full of ease and peace to start the year that way versus barreling forward and you have all these high ideals and high expectations. And if you don't meet all of those things, therefore you're a failure, and you stop doing any of the things that are good for you or are going to make you a better person or a better partner or, a better creator, a better founder, whatever it may be. That is just me. And I just want to share a little bit behind how I walk through this intention setting process, because for the new year, it is a very different time than other parts of the year. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I am a fan of doing this once a season, of sitting down, what do I want the season ahead to look like? What things can I look forward to just for the season? What foods are in season? What things do I want to try? What things do I want to be learning? What ways do I want to be growing? I think it's so helpful to break the year down into these smaller chunks, 4 of them, or maybe 5 if you do a separate one just for the holiday season. But having that be the case, doing something for a full year has a different sort of energy to it. And I think it's really helpful. It also has a tendency where it is not super specific things. Usually these are the general kind of overarching themes of your life, the stuff that you're wanting to be focusing on or doing more or calling into your life. And I think it's so good for our brains to let ourselves go there, to let ourselves have that moment in time where we give ourselves the space to do that. Because in day-to-day life and in even doing the seasonal intentions, those are very daily, practical, nitty-gritty. This is what I want it to look like. This is how I want to feel. Here's how I'm going to create those feelings. So doing this for the year, there's a few different questions that I ask. So I wanted to share that with you today. So the first part of my New Year intention setting process, this process I've just created for myself, is number 1, non-negotiable. As I just said, it is so helpful to review the years past. And specifically in that exercise, reviewing your yes list and your no list. All the things that you felt when you reviewed the year, looked at all your calendar dates, and you're looking at your schedule, you're looking at your commitments, you're looking at where your time was being spent. What things on that list were so worth the time or the energy or the amount of love or the amount of effort that you did the year before? What things can you look back on and be like, oh my gosh, yes, that was so worth it. And whether it was emotionally worth it, worth the mental space it gave you, worth the clarity it gave you, worth a lot of different things. You can start to imagine how that can play out. So reviewing what those things are. Just as important, we'll be reviewing the things that were not worth your time, your energy, or they really took from you more than they gave. So commitments, social stuff, the people and things that you're saying yes to, who you're surrounding yourself with. Were there any things that felt maybe not worth the time that you're able to look back the year as a whole? So that's the first. I would say that's the non-negotiable part of doing this, because without looking at where you've come from, you gloss over all of the things that are actually deeply meaningful and help set you up for the next year, being able to focus on doing more of the things from your yes list and making sure that you honor this commitment to yourself of the no list. It is so helpful to have that yes and no list posted somewhere where you see it. Whether that's by your desk, it's in your kitchen, it's a note on your phone, where you can start filtering these requests that come in to all of us all the time and starting to look through, like, does this align with the person that I want to be, with the person that I am becoming this year? Very important part of the process. The second thing that I do is get my journal out or a big notebook, And I love to keep these in the same journal so that every year I can go back and look at it, take that or leave that tip. But I think it's really fun to be able to look back. And it is amazing how far you come and how much you can really grow, but how we never really give ourselves that time or the recognition in our brains. We're just like on to the next thing always. So I get my journal out and I am going to write down 4 questions. Okay, so if you got a pen around or you need to go pause and do that, or you're going to listen to this later, just know that I will read these questions to you and you can write them down. Number 1, I want you to imagine that it's December 31st of this next coming year. So if you're listening to this as we're recording this would be December 31st, 2024. So almost exactly a year from this moment that you're writing. Imagine that it was a perfect year, that it was an amazing year. It was one of the best years ever. And then asking yourself, what does that mean? And doing the best you can to really not filter what things are coming up. Just write it all down. What does that mean to you to have a perfect year? Or maybe you don't want to use the word perfect. If you're like me and recovering perfectionist, what does it look like to have the most amazing year or the most meaningful year or the year that you felt proudest of? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And really putting yourself in the seat of being 1 year from now and being able to reflect on that. How did it look? How did it feel? What things felt different? What changes were made? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what did you do differently this year to make that so? What did you do differently to make it so? What did you have to let go of? What did you have to shift? Maybe what did you have to change? How did you have to change how you showed up or how you thought or how you took care of yourself or your routines? What did you need to change to make those things happen from question number 1? So a lot of this does require the braveness to write things down that maybe have not happened yet, but that you have this deep sense of desire or this deep sense of, this feels really aligned to me. This is what that would look like, and this is what that would feel like. And think about your day-to-day life. Think about all those memories and moments and the things that you're doing to really harness how you're using your time and how you're using your energy. So that's question number 2. What did you do differently to make it so? This is going to force you to see the ways in which you need to make some changes in order to get to the end goal of what you're really wanting. So it's one thing to say, I really want to have this goal, I'm really going to do this, and to just rely on willpower. It's another thing to say, I really want to do this and make this happen for myself, and here are all the things that are probably going to get in the way. Here are all the ways I'm going to get in my own way. Here are the obstacles. Here's all the self-sabotage that will probably come up. Here's all the things. So see how it requires you to get a little bit deeper than just setting a goal. It's requiring you to look forward and look out into that road and be like, what things possibly might come up that could stop me? Like, what things have I done in the past? Or what are the reasons why this has not happened previously? And why is this time going to be different? What do I need to actually change, shift, let go of in order to make that happen? Okay, third thing is writing down, what are my priorities this year? I would suggest keeping this super simple, like maybe 3, maybe 4 tops. You can't have handfuls of priorities. So when it comes down to them, or maybe you think about ranking them, if there are more than 3 or 4, which ones are the top priorities? So that if and when it comes down to it, you will be able to quickly decide that, yes, this is something that is so aligned with my vision for this next year, or no, this is not. So helpful. Okay, number 4, last question, is to pick a word. And I know a lot of people do this, but they pick a word for the next year. And I like to choose something that really embodies how I want to feel. Like, how am I approaching this year of my life? What is the thing that I want to feel versus it being an accomplishment or a tangible thing? This focusing on the feeling, as you know, I have said so many times before, the feeling is really what our brains are going for. It's not actually the end result. It's not the accomplishment itself. It's the feeling that it brings, or the feeling that we think accomplishing that thing will bring. And so there are so many ways to actually create the feeling of what you want in your life. that doesn't have to look like one certain specific way or one thing to do it. And I think if you are focusing so much on just checking a box at the end, you get to that time when you do complete it or you do make it happen and it feels a little empty, or it doesn't feel as good as you thought that it might, because you've forgotten about that actual feeling or emotion that our brains are deeply looking for and desiring, the feeling that we think that goal will create for us. It's just rarely about the goal itself, it's about the feeling. So focusing on the feeling will help you pick out multiple activities, multiple things, multiple ways that could look to create that feeling more in your life. And I think that gives our brains like a better starting point because it's more tangible, it's more specific, it's more like this list of things are things that I want to be doing more of. And then how do I make that happen in my real life? The final tip I will give you, because those are the 4 questions, the final tip is to review this weekly at first. And I know that may sound like a lot, but the reviewing process doesn't have to be anything overly complicated other than you are just reminding your brain the ways that you do want to feel, because in daily life, we are taken over by so many different emotions and stressors and things that go on during our day that pull us off track and off focus. And we need to have a way that brings us back to our center, like gets us regrounded. What is it that I wanted again? How did I want to feel? What are the things I'm really wanting to cultivate for myself? We need constant reminders of that. No matter how great you are at personal development or growth or how excited you are about these goals, if you do not make the time to sit down and review and remind your brain of what it is that you're going for, it's so easy to get distracted and lost, and then we forget about it. And even with the best intentions to keep our words to ourselves, we really want to do that. To be a person of high integrity, in order to do that, we need so many reminders. So don't feel bad about that. That is part of how our brains work. It's part of neuroscience. It's part of how we function and how we actually start to make change. Has so much to do with this. So reviewing it weekly at first, pick a day of the week, put on some calming music. Maybe you're listening to a meditation, or I like to review it before I'm doing a meditation because then it really feels like I'm reminded of all the things that I'm wanting to focus on or call into my life. So once you do that at first, then it's up to you, if that's feeling good, to keep doing it weekly and you feel like you need it. I usually get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've got it. I've read this thing so many times now. I've been refreshed. I can pretty much remember it. Then I move it to quarterly. So every beginning of each season, before I write down the seasonal intentions, I have a date in my calendar that I put in January, the beginning of each season, to review this. Because you'll find too that there's so many things that also happen that are unpredictable, or things that we really couldn't have anticipated. And your desires and your intentions will shift through the year, and that's okay. And in that process of continually reviewing it, it is so much easier to morph with it, to flow with it, and not stay stuck on, I claimed this in January and I'm going to do it no matter what. But if it gets to a point where things change, or there's a different factor involved now, or something else that you learned about, or something that you didn't know existed before, all of those things can change, or your life circumstances or transitions or changes, or different seasons of life. There's so many things I think that can happen. And so holding this with an open palm, when you focus on the feeling, there's so many different ways to get to that feeling or emotion than just one path. So I love doing that because it takes this process of setting your goals and doing so in a way that is actually flexible with your real life, that is counting on the fact that you will be morphing, changing, and growing throughout the year, and that it's a really beautiful practice to review them. And it's okay if things change, as long as you're not letting yourself off the hook, and you probably know that, and keeping the promises that you make to yourself and working on that internal relationship to yourself. Are you doing the things you set out to do? If not, why? What's getting in the way? What are those obstacles? What are those ways you're talking to yourself? What are those old pathways that are still gunking up the system and getting in the way of you actually living your dreams and living your life the way that you want it to look and feel? So much of that is in our control, or at least in our creation, that we have so much creation power. Maybe control is the wrong word, but creation power to focus our brains on the things that we really want them to be focused on, and therefore leaving less time and space and bandwidth for that to be taken up with things that we don't care about, or are sucking us dry, or just are not feeling as aligned to us anymore. I hope that this is helpful. I hope this gives you maybe some new ideas or a new way to approach the beginning of a new year, try it out. See, let me know if you do. I'd love to hear how it goes for you if you do, or if you have any questions about doing it, let me know. Again, this is just the way that I have been doing things that has been so helpful for me, so helpful. And I really want to share it with you. I hope that it does the same for you in your life. And please take what resonates and leave the rest. Try the parts and pieces that sound the most interesting to you and maybe morph it with what you're already doing. Really figure out who you are, what you need, how you thrive, the ways that you work best, the ways your brain works best, and figuring out those ways to not be getting in your own way all the time. I hope that you are having a great start to the new year. I hope it's slow and peaceful and that you are giving yourself some time and some space to really integrate these things. I love you so much, and I'll see you guys back here next week. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.